Well, I just had to cut a sweater for the first time. We'll learn how to do sweater surgery. That'll be something we learn to do for the first time in the new year. Ay, ay, ay. Oh, hello. Today we are doing a different kind of video for this channel. 99% of the time, I'm just talking to y'all about books. It's in the title, Books Like Whoa. That's what we're doing here. But I was so inspired at the end of last year / beginning of this year by a particular type of video that I wanted to pay it forward, and that is an Everything I Knit this year video. This was my first year of knitting, and I got absolutely hooked for a lot of various and sundry reasons having to do with mental health, physical health, stress levels, and just gosh darn enjoyment of the craft. It is such a beautiful tickle to my brain in a way that I very much enjoy. Also, Hastings has found the tripod, so, you know, he's moving it around a little bit. Sorry about that. Anyway, the other thing is I was really inspired by watching aka Nora Knits in her first year of knitting and seeing how much she got done. I found that really inspiring in terms of being a new knitter and kind of thinking like, wow, I could actually try some harder things than I thought I could as a beginner. But something that I think is harder to find are plus size knitters who are as plus size as I am. I'm giving very, what is that, the Venus of Dusseldorf. I have at my full bust, I'm at, I think 63 inches. So it's hard to find gals or, you know, he, she's, and theys that are as plus size as I am. And I feel like it's an act of paying it forward to talk about what I've learned specifically in my first year of knitting as a plus size person. Especially, you know, we're in the rise of Ozempic. We are backsliding on a lot of the body positivity gains or body neutrality gains we've had in the last few years. So this feels like something I can do to share a resource with people who can't just walk into every store and find something that fits them. You can make it. So with that being said, I'm gonna go chronologically through what I made. I've already got sweaters falling around me. I think I made about 10 sweaters, probably like a couple vests and cardigans, a few tank tops, a variety of things. I made a lot this year because #anxiety. Anyway, let's just get into it. I've talked to you guys enough about the what fors and whys. So I tried to make notes. I put all of my notes on Ravelry so that I would remember. So good job past Mara in doing that. So we're just gonna go through projects starting at the bottom and working our way up. So it looks like the first thing I actually finished was a Sophie Scarf by Petite Knit. This was before I had more complicated feelings about Petite Knit. We'll talk about it, I guess, because there's one other thing on here from her. But anyway, I really enjoyed this as a first project. So I work from home, and I'm always somebody who needs to have something to do with my hands if I don't want to multitask. This was the first time realizing that knitting could be a great solution to that, of keeping my hands busy and being able to focus, because it's just garter stitch back and forth. I did mess up the counts. I think if you are gonna do this project as a beginner, I would say that getting something to count your rows would be helpful, or having some system by which to do that would be helpful. Once I realized how much I'd messed up the counting, I'm trying to get this even so I can show you guys. Like, it's not totally visible to the naked eye, but there is a slight difference in the increase versus decrease rate. Once I realized that was something I really needed to focus on keeping track of, I just started making little tabs, and that worked just fine. But I actually got quite a bit of use out of this in the late winter to early spring last year. I do live in a warm climate here in Tennessee, so some of the like super heavy knits for me are less practical, but this is a really nice transitional piece, so much so that I ended up making another thing like this. But yeah, this was a good solid first project aside from the counting part of this that I think is a little something a beginner might not know they need to really focus on. And I love the yarn. So I got, one of the things I learned from when I learned to sew last year was that getting quality materials really helped the outcome of some of my early pieces. So I did go ahead and get some nice heritage wool for this project. The other thing being, one of the reasons I was interested in learning how to knit is that from I have an autoimmune disease, from the chemo I get from it, I've started having like skin reaction stuff. So having non-scratchy, breathable materials has been something I've had to transition to in all of my wardrobe. So getting some nice hand-dyed heritage Rambouillet from Megs & Co. This is her Ghost Town DK. I think the colorway is Because the Night Belongs to Lovers. This took 79 grams of that. And in terms of this is my first time doing a version of I-cord edging, my first time learning how to increase and decrease, and my first time binding off in pattern. So there was a lot of firsts with this one. But yeah, I think I've actually gotten quite a bit of wear out of this, so that was a success. Something that was less successful, and I have ideas about how to fix this, but I purposely have not done that so that I could show you guys how hilarious this is. Early in my knitting journey, well, you guys are gonna see, you can make nice garments and be doing some things fundamentally wrong. So some of those things included gauge for me, as well as I was twisting either both my knits and my purls, or at least my knits, and then I accidentally ended up twisting purls when I was trying to fix my twisted knits. Who even knows? We'll get there as it comes up. But I wanted to make a pair of socks because that's something that I've really struggled with since having these skin issues. Sorry, my cat is being he's eyeing this pile of knits very suspiciously. Oh no. Oh no, he's unraveling one of the sweaters. Just sit there. Do I have a pair of scissors handy? It's okay, it's okay. There you go. Believe it or not, I'm usually pretty good at protecting my knits from the cats. We'll learn how to do sweater surgery. That'll be something we learn to do for the first time in the new year. Ay. Though having said that, I now am remembering he also did almost this exact same thing with the very first sweater I knit. And that was when I learned I had to protect the knits a little bit more. Usually they're in a room he doesn't go into. Okay, I have no idea what I was saying. I think I was talking to you guys about my first disastrous pair of socks. Okay, yes. One of the things that's been a side effect of one of my meds, I was telling you guys, is my skin. And particularly the thing that I've struggled with is finding socks that I can wear, because most of them have so much spandexy kind of stuff in them that it's super irritating. I really can't wear them for very long. One of the first things I thought it would be a practical reason to learn to knit was to make my own socks. So I didn't really understand the value of a nylon and a sock blend gauge. I didn't understand a lot of things. So what I ended up making myself, because I was like, oh, I'll make some house socks just to have around the house. I ended up making comically gigantic ankle socks. Look at these. Look at this. So I really enjoyed the process of turning a heel. If I had to rank one thing that I enjoy most in knitting, it's doing that frickin' heel turn. And I also love a Kitchener stitch. I know other people don't like it, but I find it really like satisfying. Anyway, these are hilariously large, but I made myself finish. The first one was not as large as the second one. I don't know why. I made myself finish, and I've read that you can shrink things by pouring boiling water on them. Let me know if that's real. This is 100% Blueface Leicester wool. also from Meggs & Co. So it's nice wool, and I guess I could unravel it. I guess that's probably what would be the most responsible thing, but it's the first pair of socks I ever made. I kind of want to see if I can make them work, at least as like slippers, basically. So let me know if you have ideas about how to do that. But anyway, these are comically large. And I realized, I did not at that point think, oh, I don't understand gauge. I thought, oh, I made a too big of a size, and still made too large, but actually functional, a second pair. This is in Camellia Fiber Co. Sylvan Fingering, I think. And it's this beautiful, like cashmere, silk, merino blend, and these are my house socks that I wear all the time. So these are very functional, but they're still like technically wrong. They're not the right size. And I used for both of these, let me tell you what the pattern is. It is the Woolen Vine Make a Pair of Socks video I found on YouTube, which is Favorite Socks by Kristen Lehrer. It's a good video tutorial if you understand gauge, which I did not at this point. So pro tip for beginners, gauge actually does matter, and needle size matters. I just kind of grabbed the ones that I thought sounded good and went for it. So I haven't successfully finished a pair of socks. I did start a pair in the correct gauge on a pair of DPNs with the Crazy Sock Lady. But I was starting them still with a wool that doesn't have any nylon in it, like it's not a sock yarn. So I don't actually think it's worth finishing those as they are. So at some point I will make myself an actual pair of socks, an actual sock yarn that I can wear outside of the house, but that has not yet happened. But you know, I purled, I knit, I still learned a lot from this process, and I like I said, I wear the second pair with some frequency around the house, and this I think might be salvageable as another pair of kind of slipper socks, so let me know your thoughts. Anyway, those were my earliest projects that I was working on while I was working on my first sweater. In picking my first sweater, I was looking at, I think it's Knits by Whitney, who does great pattern roundups for plus size people. Yeah, I really enjoyed a lot of her content aimed at plus size knitters. She's doing the Lord's work. I appreciate you out there, Whitney. And one of the things she had mentioned was that her favorite sweater that she had made was the Lento Sweater. So that was, you know, I was a stockinette raglan. I see now particularly why this was good for me as a beginner, which is that it's at a very large gauge. For a stockinette raglan kind of sweater, so it goes by quicker than it might have otherwise. And when you're knitting, when you're a beginning plus size knitter, one of the things you have to kind of figure out is how much you want something that's going to take you essentially twice as long to make as someone else. You know, if somebody, well, we'll also get into the sizing, because I think I learned lessons from this about sizing that I didn't understand until halfway through the year. But theoretically at the time, I thought that I had a 63-inch full bust, like at the fullest part of my bust. So I also needed to add in positive ease. So I was needing something that was a pretty large size out there. And this could accommodate that. Yeah, and getting a recommendation from somebody who considers themselves to be plus size, that they thought that it was a good fit, was encouraging to me. And I agree with her. I think that this kind of raglan does work well, at least for my body shape as somebody whose widest measurement is their bust. This worked well for me. In terms of first, this was a provisional cast on. So looking back, I'm like, oh wow, I'm impressed I did that for my first sweater, but that was fine. I can see now that I did it inside out, but for ribbing, that's okay. The other thing is that this time I did not have interchangeable needles, and I didn't really fully understand. So I was doing magic loop for anything that was in the round, which I think for a beginner was ambitious in retrospect. But I also didn't understand that you could get cables that matched the lengths that you were trying to work on. So in doing magic loop, I ended up having some laddering in some inopportune places, which I fixed by going back and, you know, using the little crochet hook and tightening things up. But it does create some unevenness kind of in the stockinette right up close to the face, which nobody aside from knitters notices. Whenever I've worn this, I've gotten a ton of compliments on it. It's a Surrey. Because of the sensitivity of my skin, I didn't want to risk doing a mohair that I knew parts of would be next to my skin. So it's a Surrey from Camellia Fiber Co. in Moonflower, held double with a one of a kind that I got from her in her Christmas sale in 2023. So it's sort of like a moss, like a sagey green, and it's a beautiful marl. And in terms of the fit, I did not understand how much superwash was going to grow. So this was, I was afraid to, I did a gauge swatch, but I was afraid to get it wet. So I did not block my gauge swatch. So I didn't see how much it was going to grow. And it grew so much. It grew like 3 inches, I think. So I knit it to the exact place I thought that I wanted it, and then it grew. So this has ended up being very oversized, which is not, I've discovered this year, my favorite fit for me and what I like to wear on my body, but it is very comfy. It's so soft because of the Surrey, and like I said, I get a ton of compliments on it. I think because it's such a pretty kind of marled color. So I would say that this was a solid place to start as my first sweater. And spoilers, there may be another one of these that you will see. Really like the Lento Sweater. That was my first sweater. So then next, I'm looking back at what I did in these early days, and I'm like, man, I appreciate my chutzpah and just going for it, which I think is the right spirit to start a new craft, by the way. Like, just try it. You'll find out if it works or not. My next project was a ranunculus. Because by then we were coming up into springtime, and I was like, well, I don't really want to knit something that I can't wear for 8 months. Like, I want to try to knit some stuff that I could actually wear over the late spring into summer. So I was like, okay, this is sort of like an open texture. It's at a very, again, kind of a higher gauge, so it's got kind of that loose texture to it. And this was when somebody, so I get a ton of wear out of this, by the way. This is probably my most worn garment, and it's because it's so good for Zoom. Like I mentioned, I work remotely, so I would just put a tank top on and throw this over, and this is so cute on camera. Like, it's been great for that. It's a little cropped for my taste, so I don't really wear this not on Zoom. I take that back. I did wear this over a dress a couple of times, but mostly this is something that I wear around the house. But it's so, I love this. It was challenging for a beginner, the infamous ranunculus, but there's so much video help out there. I can't remember her name, but I'll try to link it somewhere. It has a whole playlist going over the hard steps of the ranunculus. And anytime I wasn't sure what the instructions were saying, because I like Midori Hiroshi's patterns a lot, but the pattern writing style can be a little overwhelming. Anytime I couldn't quite follow what she was saying, I would just go watch one of those videos and it helped me figure it out. But this was where I had somebody mention like, oh, I think you're twisting, I can't remember if they said knits or purls, but I didn't even really understand what that meant, so I couldn't really fix it. So, and I went and looked, and the way that I was twisting my knits and purls is not the way most people twist. So every fix for it, I was like, oh, well, I'm already doing that right. So there you go. You will see twisted knits and purls for quite some time to come in this video. But yeah, I really like this. I made it in the Kelporn Woolens Mojave, which I would definitely recommend. I actually, probably one of my top 2 or 3 favorite summer yarns that I worked with. And this was my first time doing lace work, first time working with a plant-based yarn, first time doing a compound circular yoke and raglan construction, first time doing I-cord bind off, which I also love, so fun. First time attempting a tubular cast on that I abandoned because it was not stretchy enough in this fiber, which I did look up on Reddit. It seems like a lot of people have that problem with the way this tubular cast on works. But anyway, this is not done correctly, but it's still beautiful, and I got a ton of wear out of it. And again, It's one that I would like to remake in the coming year with a different yarn, with a wool yarn, knowing what I know now, and see how different, like compare and contrast basically, how much I've learned about how to knit since I made this. Okay, and then next, what happened next? This is like a nice little trip through the past for me. Oh, okay, next is something I don't have because I did my first gift knit. And that was the Shell Border Baby Cardigan P097. I made this in drops, I think merino, some kind of drops merino, what was it? Baby merino in the colorway Peanut. And I made this along with, I guess I'll do both of the things I made for her. One of the people who reports to me at work had a baby. I wanted to make her a cardigan and baby bonnet. So this was the cardigan that I made. It was my first time making a baby size thing and my first time making a cardigan, first time doing a bottom up construction, first time doing any kind of seaming together knitting, and my first time trying to make buttonholes. This is where I could have found out that my knits were twisted, but I did not. I couldn't understand why my yarn overs were not working correctly, but we live and we learn. I managed to squeak out some kind of buttonhole that worked. The reason I thought this would be a good next project was that I had my eye on several cardigans and several bottom-up pieces, but I thought that it might be smart to attempt to do this with a baby-sized garment first rather than a plus-size garment, because it's just a lot smaller scale. So if I needed to rip back, it would be a lot less frustrating. And also I don't know. I mean, I get people at work gift cards when they have babies or whatever, because I think that's the most helpful. But I thought that this would be like a nice personal touch to go along with it. Looking at the pictures now, I definitely can see where I had some like tension issues. Like my tension is not perfect. I can definitely see that now in a way I couldn't then. But this is so freaking cute. She sent me a picture of her daughter wearing it for Christmas, like to a Christmas party, and she is so stinking adorable in it. That's the nice thing about baby knits. Even if it didn't turn out right, I mean, a baby's wearing it, it's gonna be cute. And then the other thing I made, which I think might be one of my best quality garments or quality objects that I made this year, and it was definitely the most fun because it was quick and every step of it was engaging, was the Baby Bear Bonnet by Pernilla Larson, aka Knitting for Olive. It was so cute. It's so engaging throughout. I made it in drops Flora in the colorway Petrol, and I just think that this is absolutely darling. I have one picture of the set together. It's so cute. And that baby bonnet I will definitely make again as a gift because it doesn't take a ton of time, and it's very high impact relative to the amount of work it takes to do it. But yeah, so that was a gift knit, my first gift knitting. For the Baby Bear Bonnet, that was my first hat that I made. It was my first time doing moss stitch, and it was my first time doing an applied I-cord tie. So still learning stuff. The way you make the ears is basically like turning a heel if you were doing a sock. And like I said, that's my favorite thing to do so far in knitting. Like that actual process I find so satisfying. That was the next thing I made. Okay, and then after that, the thing that I made was what I would consider to be my first fail. And that was a Cumulus Blouse, which is also by Petite Knit. And actually, let me go grab that because I don't have it handy. So this, I would say, is my first failure, like straight up failure in terms of what I ended up with is not very usable. I do have this in my coat closet as it's cold out and I need to go like shovel some snow or to go to the mailbox or run to the post office, like a quick, extremely warm pullover layer. So I do get use in that sense, but this was not what I envisioned for this garment. So this is the Cumulus Blouse. This is my first time doing a V-neck. So, you know, I did learn that. This was ill-conceived from the start. Like I said, I didn't really fully at the time understand gauge and how it impacted sizing. So this did not go up to the size that I thought that I needed. So I guess spoilers. At this, spoilers of something I will learn, but I'll just talk about what went wrong with this. So I was picking patterns always for my full bust measurement. I had seen some people talking about how if you have a really full bust, sometimes you might just want to pick for your upper bust or kind of a midway between. Because if you are a plus size person, you know this, you're so used to things not fitting. I was like, what are you talking about? That's part of why I'm making my own clothes, to get a better fit. Like, why would I purposely make something too small? That's the problem I have in stores. Well, I see now why people tell you to do that, because the fullest part of my bust, like I said, my bust is my fullest measurement. And because I am very chesty, they hang lower than where you normally would want to split for the sleeve. So if you take, I've ended up mostly, my full bust is 63. If I wear my normal undergarments, it gets to 61. My upper bust is, I think, 53, maybe 52, I forget. So I now kind of target like mid to high 50s when I'm picking a size. So I probably could have made whatever the largest size was that Petite Knit was offering, but because Petite Knit is not, I would argue, a consistently size inclusive designer, and that's part of why I will not really be making stuff from her anymore, because I don't know, I just had this moment of like, why am I trying to make these garments work for people who clearly don't want me to wear them? So even though theoretically, now that I understand how sizing works better, I could probably make most of what Petite Knit makes, she definitely is not consistently hitting the 60-inch mark that the knitting world has adopted as size inclusive. I'll tell you that I think that 70 inches is what people should actually be aiming for. That's what Universal Standard does, and their clothes fit, I think, like 99.9% of people. So I think 70 inches would be better as a standard, but she's not even consistently hitting the 60. So I'm not gonna make things from her anymore. All that to say, I could have made this in her largest size and probably actually gotten the garment that I wanted, but I didn't think about that. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go up 2 needle sizes and that'll increase the gauge enough that I'll get enough room. It increased the gauge way too much. I also, instead of holding 2 mohair together because of my skin sensitivity, I thought I'll hold 2 Surrey alpaca together. Well, the one that I had is the Drops Surrey alpaca, and it is listed as an Aran weight yarn, but I didn't really believe that. But when you hold them together, it does create this incredibly dense, very, very warm fabric. So even if this gauge trick I had tried worked, this would have been too hot for me to wear most of the time. The other thing is, where she has you split, or where she has you join in the round, it doesn't work on a large busted person. From what I can tell, like I said, I think if I had stuck to gauge, maybe it would have been a little bit better, but what ends up happening is that you split for sleeves way too low, so then it's just not very functional. And when I realized that's the way it was going, instead of knitting fully, I just made it cropped and bound off and decided to just chalk this up to a lesson. So, all that to say, I'm proud that I tried it. I learned a lot from this, and I think having a failure is actually kind of good, because that means that you're learning and growing. I did it with yarn that was not expensive, so this did not feel like a disaster, as if I was using some of my really nice yarn. So not my favorite, not very practical, and basically just serves as sort of like a sweatshirt, a very hot sweatshirt that works when it's cold out, to just like pop in and out of the house. So then next, I made another Sophie scarf with some yarn that I'd originally bought to make socks, and then realized that you probably are not mostly making socks at a worsted weight. I bought a lot of one skeins when I was first starting, not understanding yarn weight or gauge, that I'm still finding creative gift projects for, which has been fun, because especially this Christmas season, that has worked out well. The next thing I finished was another gift. So somebody else who reported to me had a baby the previous year, and I was like, ooh, it's gonna be kind of weird optics if I give one person this nice hand knit gift, and I didn't do that for the other person. I made her the Cabriole for a toddler. I made it out of Drops Merino Extra Fine in the colorway Dark Heather. It's very squishy, but it does splinter a lot, so be forewarned. This was my first time using DPNs, which I did for the sleeves, because by this point I think I did have an interchangeable needle set. I don't know if other people have this at their work, but we get like, thank you for helping me with this, and they'll send you points, and then you can cash those points in for something. I cashed mine in for a gift card to get myself a set of interchangeable needles, so I was mostly using that, which helped a lot with all my laddering and magic loop issues. So scarred from that, like having all this laddering and knowing this was a gift, I thought, oh, for the sleeves, instead of trying to do magic loop, I'll use DPNs. The way I was doing it initially did hurt my wrist, but the results were great. And I think my takeaway from that was, when I want to make sure that the sleeves look nice and I don't have a fixed circular that will cover it, DPNs do get the job done better than magic loop, at least for me. Yeah, so this was another cardigan. It's so cute. She sent me pictures of her wearing it. She looks adorable. And yeah, it was a lace pattern. So it was a different, you know, me learning a different lace pattern, a different kind of cardigan construction. So yeah, this was another successful gift, I feel like. Then I made the Color Tip Tee by Emily Curtis in some different colors of the linen quill. The main color was Crocus Bud, and then I did some accents in the purple clematis and the magnolia blossom. This was a lot of firsts. So here she is. This is another one I've gotten a lot of wear out of, since it's a little bit of a warmer, weather-friendly fabric. I made this this is my first time using the recommended yarn. So that, I think, was a really instructive to see how helpful it can be to be sure that you're hitting your gauge exactly right when you're kind of comparing apples to apples. It was my first time doing German short rows to make a sleeve cap. First time doing a flat construction seamless with set-in sleeves. First time doing a folded collar after the neck hole was in place, because I had done a provisional cast-on folded collar, but not this version. First time doing fingering weight adult-sized garment, which I learned a lot from. First time doing an afterthought pocket, and first time doing a mattress stitch. So this took me absolutely forever. This was such a long project because it's fingering and because I'm plus size. So I realized I should have learned something from that, and I didn't, and you will see that I didn't. I wear this a lot. I really like this pattern. This is probably my favorite pattern writing style of anything I did this year. I really enjoyed the way Emily Curtis has her patterns laid out. The construction was interesting and fun, and this was a really engaging project. I think the fact that it's just so much stockinette in the round at a fingering weight, I realize is just not for me. It's not engaging enough for me to be worth it for most projects that I'm interested in doing. So I am happy with this. I will say I followed this to the T. The only thing I didn't do was a contrast color on the bind off, because I just personally didn't really want to draw attention to that. So I just used the same color. I followed the length recommendation to make it a little more cropped. If I do a Fix It February, I think I have plenty of this yarn left, and I think I would lengthen this because I think that would make it even more wearable. But I really, like I said, I get compliments on this whenever I wear it. I really like this as a garment. I think I probably should have heeded my experience, which is I just don't think I love doing this much stockinette at a fingering weight. So that was a successful summer garment, and you will see we're about to enter the tough times where I was struggling with that. Next, I needed a break from tiny fingering stockinette, and so I cast on my Christmas sweater. This was actually another thing I really wanted to do as part of becoming a knitter, which is I've traditionally always bought myself a new Christmas sweater every year. But instead, I decided I could make myself my Christmas sweater. So this is the My Dear by Tanya Barley, yeah. And this is Drops Daisy as the main color, and North Bay Fiber Heritage DK and Holly as the contrast. I went with this color because it was the only true like Christmas red I could find at the time. So glad I did. I love North Fiber Heritage DK for color work. It's woolen spun, so it just has this nice kind of loftiness to it that really does the color work justice. This was single strand color work. This is my first time doing color work, as you can tell. First time doing color work in a garment, first time doing a purely circular yoke construction, first time doing continental to do the, so I'm an English style knitter. That was how my great aunt taught me back in the day. So I'm an English style knitter, but I do two-handed. So I do continental for the contrast and English for the main. So my first time doing that. This is my first time doing wrap and turn short rows, and my first time doing short rows after the yoke as opposed to before starting really into the yoke. So a lot of firsts for this, and this turned out fantastic. I've worn it so much this holiday season. It's due for a good wash from how much I've been wearing it. And I will tell you that this does pill like a mofo, but I think it's totally worth it given the cost, and it's such a soft, lovely yarn to wear against the skin that for me, it's definitely worth it. It's very heavy DK though, so it creates quite a dense fabric. But anyway, this was a big success, and I'm gonna make another one of Tanya Barley's patterns in the new year. I will say I really like her color work designs, and I think that this was a good first color work project. Her chart was clear. The instructions are very simple to follow. And yeah, this was a good first color work pattern. So if you're looking for a deer sweater of some kind and you want to try color work, I could definitely recommend this. And I think I made, I believe, either the biggest or the second biggest size. So yeah, this is lovely. I've gotten a ton of wear out of this Christmas season, and I look forward to wearing it many years to come. I think if I were I might add this into my Fix It February, because I think I want to lengthen the sleeves a little bit based on wearing it. I think I just am going to extend, I think on several of my sleeves, if I do a Fix It February, I'm just going to extend the ribbing, because I think when I've been setting, so I would say my shape is, I'm a little teapot short and stout. My little short arms, I think I'm not always accounting for the lack of elastic in these cuffs to help keep it at sort of a bracelet length, which is my preference. So I think adding some ribbing will help compensate, especially when I'm driving. See how it's riding up a little bit? It's fine when I'm just, you know, living life, but when I'm driving, it rides up a little more than I'd like. So yeah, I might extend the ribbing on this one. But anyway, that was my sweater. The break I took to knit a sweater to save me from all of these frickin' summer knits that almost drove me crazy. So next up we have my Streamline Tank, and let's talk about this one. Let's go on a journey together for this one. This is what I would call a zoom top. This and the next one are both zoom tops. I purposefully made them with the idea that I'm not wearing these out of the house. These are just to go under a cardigan when I'm on a work call. When I made this, oh gosh, this was a project designed to use up some yarn that I had bought before understanding what people meant when they talked about the difficulty of knitting with cotton. Some people can do it, some people love it. It turns out I'm not that girl. This is the Barocco Pima cotton. I originally bought it, again in my naivete, to make socks with. Absolutely not. It's like a worsted or DK weight cotton. I don't know, I just didn't know. I was new and got excited at the Pretty Yarn store, and I didn't understand what I was doing. So I got this Pima cotton, and I was like, okay, I'm definitely not gonna make socks out of this. Let's get a little bit more of the same colorway, and I can make a tank top. That's great. So I went and got some more, and when I cast on, it was agony. I don't know how people knit with just cotton. The feel of it while I was knitting was so unpleasant. It was hurting my wrist so badly. And I was like, this is not gonna work. So I thought, okay, I'll hold it double with some of the leftover linen quill that I had from my color tip tee. I'll hold it double. They're both purple, that'll be fine. I didn't have enough to do both sides. So I did one side in the darker color. You can see where it cut off. This is the back, meant to go under the cardigan that nobody will ever see. And then this is the front. So do I actually get a good amount of wear out of this? I did. I wore this quite a bit for work with a cardigan. It is functional. Did I enjoy the process of this? Absolutely not, because of the yarn choice. I really like this Streamline Tank pattern. I think it's from 2 of Wands, and I would certainly make it again, just not in this fabric. So this is my first time doing KB1, first time doing a seamed tank, first time trying to work with 100% cotton yarn, first time doing a CSD, and first time losing yarn chicken because I did not have enough of my original Pearl Soho to finish this off in the way that I had intended to. So there was that. And then at the same time, because apparently I was just trying to like make my wrists never recover from working with cotton, I also had the Ripple camisole going, which we'll get to. But anyway, in terms of what I actually finished, I was taking a break from all of this wrist-killing cotton to work on Stripes by Andrea Mowry. This I fell in love with as soon as I saw her sample, the colorful sample. I loved it. And I made this the sweater that I worked on while I was at my best friend's wedding for all the festivities. This is what I was working on. And so it has special memories for that reason. This is another circular one. This was my first time doing stripes, so learning how to do jogless stripes, which I think I was pretty successful with. Like, I can't immediately tell where I was changing over. Okay, I guess it was here, because I can tell for this one. But this is all in different sport weights. If I were gonna, I think, so this is a circular, let me tell you something about the pattern. It's circular yoke. It's pretty straightforward stockinette. The real thing about this is the color change and the stripage. I think given the fit I ended up getting out of this, because again, I ended up picking a bigger size than I would knowing what I know now. I wish that I had made this out of scrap yarns instead of buying yarn to make it. I definitely see myself making myself another one of these in the future using leftover sport weight yarn, because I think it's a really fun version of a stockinette pattern. It does have the stripage to like give you that potato chip quality of like, oh, I just want to go to one more stripe. So I would definitely make this again. I'll just say that I think this ended up being an expensive project to essentially be a sweatshirt, which is how I wear it. I've worn it a lot, but it's basically a sweatshirt rather than a fitted sweater, which is what I was hoping for. Next, another break for my poor wrists from the cotton projects I had going was I did my first cabled project. So I did a cabled scarf from the Knit How book, and it was called the Alder Scarf. I did it in Icelandic wool, which I learned from the process of making it I cannot use again. I used every last ounce of it, thankfully, and I can't use it because it was literally giving my hands like a rash. It was not sensitive skin friendly, but it was beautiful. It was sort of this unicorn colored yarn. I really loved it, and it was a gift for my mom for Christmas that she really appreciated. She was going to Antarctica for Christmas this year, so I made her lots of warm accessories to keep her warm there. So that was one of the things that I made her. And yeah, like I said, it was my first time cabling, and I learned as I went that I think I prefer the cable hooks as opposed to cable needles. But for that one, I used a cable needle. Yeah, it was pretty straightforward. It turned out well. It was just, you know, I learned that that length of scarf is just, it just keeps going, you know? Takes a while. Okay, so, oh yeah, so here's the other thing that I was working on, the other summer knit that I had going alongside the Ripple tank. So this is the Corran Cardigan by the Creabea, Rebecca Clow. I definitely had a Clow up this year, if you will. You'll notice that I ended up making a lot of her patterns because they are size inclusive, and she has a very similar sensibility to me in terms of I've realized I just don't love an all stockinette project. She doesn't seem to either. There's always like an interesting stitch that is still like memorizable, but it's like one step up from a stockinette to keep me a little more engaged. So I wanted to make, I had this linen yarn that I had bought with the intention to make a Tolsta Tee. I ended up frogging that because it was absolutely killing my wrists and it was just too heavy. This was something I had to learn the hard way because I love linen and cotton for sewing. Those are my favorite things to sew with. And I really am a believer in the breathability of those. Like I really appreciate that quality of the fabric. And I think for knitting yarn, it just is not a one-to-one translation. But I had bought all of this linen yarn from Drops to make that tee that didn't work out. So I thought, okay, if I make a cardigan that has kind of an open quality to it, it won't feel as heavy. And I wanted a cropped cardigan to go with some of my summer linen pantsuit things that I have. Not pantsuits, what am I talking about? A jumper, like a onesie, a romper, however, whatever we're calling them. I wanted like a cropped cardigan to go with it. So this was when I discovered I was twisting my knits because when I was trying to do the yarn overs, they were not working correctly. So this is what helped me fix my knits because I realized to get the pattern to work, I needed to do that. I will say that having now worn this for a season, I'm gonna change out the button situation. I originally put these super cute little bird buttons on. I think I'm actually gonna make this, because this was bottom up, something I'm learning still, this is an area I can continue to learn from, is that when you have a large bust, doing bottom up is particularly tricky because of the way the garment ends up sitting on you. It's hard to get that to be simulated without the top of the garment there to get the final way that it's gonna hang. So while I did try it on as I went, it didn't really match the reality of the end garment. So it's a little shorter than I'd like. And I think what I can do to fix that is instead of having 3 buttons, I'm just gonna do 1 button and make it closer to the way the Cabriole fits, where it's sort of, so right now, you know, it just does the typical cardigan thing where you line the buttons up and it sits like this. I think when I do it that way, it gets too short for how large my bust is. So it's like the length is right, but as per usual, the tétés get in the way, which is just life with very large tétés. So I think to compensate from that, I think what I could do is make it fit more like the Cabriole, where there's just 1 button and it's kind of going like this. I think that that would look better if I want to button it. So I'm gonna make that change as a part of Fix It February. But anyway, I think this ended up being a really good use of this yarn. I do have a little bit more left of it, so I guess I could try to lengthen it, but I think that would be difficult in a bottom-up construction. And I honestly, it does really hurt my hands to use it. I did find that I saw some, bless this older lady knitter who clearly has had this problem before, said, I saw it somewhere where she mentioned that if you run it through your ball winder twice, it can help take some of the toothiness out of it and make it easier to work with. So I ran every skein I had through my ball winder 3 times to make it workable, and that did help a lot. But it is not very fun to work with, and I think I'm gonna use the rest of what I have probably to make gift like dishcloths, like make fancy dishcloths, because I think in those little like squares, that's a much more manageable size usage of that particular yarn. But I really like my Corran cardigan. I think I'll like it even more once I fix the button situation, but this was a very handy, engaging knit. So this was a success, I think. We get to my infamous Ripple tank, which I actually love. So this was meant to be a bralette, so I'm not gonna try it on for you because I don't think it's YouTube appropriate. But I wear this all the time as a zoom top under a cardigan. It originally was this Mandarin Petite cotton, and that I actually would work with again if it was in stockinette. It's a Santa's Garn yarn, beautiful blue lavender color that I really liked. But I had bought it to use in a ribbed construction, and the cotton just doesn't work well in ribbed. So once again, I went back to my handy dandy Pearl Soho linen quill to pair these two up to make this vaguely workable for ribbed. And as a ribbed tank, it is great. It's also bottom up, and you can see the line where I fixed my knits, the before and after. I think that's very funny, but nobody else notices that except for me, or I'm sure other knitters would notice. My camera overheated, so not totally sure where I left this off, but let's double check what all first I had on this guy. This was my first, oh, I guess I didn't see anything first on this. I mean, I guess that was my first bottom up bralette in the round, my first fully ribbed garment. And yeah, I got a lot of wear out of this as a zoom top, and yeah, it was a success. I would make this again in not a cotton, something that had some actual stretch to it. But I say that to get something with some stretch to it, I would have to do a fingering weight wool, and am I looking to do a fingering weight version of this? No. So this is probably a one and done, at least for now. But I do get quite a bit of wear out of it. I am a gal who wears my knits, I have to say. Because for me, that was why I started sewing, was I wanted to make my own stuff. And once you learn how to make your own garments, I at least have a very hard time buying things either from stores, because either I'm like, well, I could just make it, or because I'm thinking about the way they have it priced and having some kind of knowledge of how it was made. I'm like, there's no way somebody's getting paid enough to make this, so that I feel bad anyway. So I'm knitting stuff to wear it. That is a big consideration for me. Okay, then we get into, let's just go ahead and cover all of my gift knits, I guess, because I had a nice little run of peppering these in around my bigger projects when I just needed a break. So I made gloves number 1 for my mom for her birthday. This was my first pair of gloves. It was first time doing a full finished object with DPNs, and my first time having to figure out how to do a finger opening with my DPNs. I made this holding some leftover Moonflower silk suri from my first sweater from my Lento. I held that with the Pearl Soho Widgeon in the colorway Orange Carmine because we are from Tennessee, so I thought these would be very classy ways to have some University of Tennessee themed gloves if she was going to go to any football games in the fall. I will say that I think that the yarn, the gauge with the recommended needle size made no sense. I ended up just going with so the recommended yarn is a DK, and then the size needles they're recommending, I forget, I want to say it was like a 3.5. Whatever it was, I was hitting my stitch gauge, but my row gauge was wildly larger. So I actually eliminated a bunch of the repeats for this particular one, and still, I think, made perfectly like the right size gloves. If I had kept going, they would have been like opera length fingerless wool gloves, which seems to me to not be that practical. But I really love this repeat. It's a very simple but very effective one. She's used it in her latest sweater. I will say I bought this pattern prior to really understanding what her inclusivity situation is. Until she's more inclusive, I would not buy more patterns from her. I think she's getting better, but you know, better is not enough for me in my world. Yeah, but I really like those. I'll make those again, probably for myself, because I could use a pair of fingerless gloves. Then I made a bunch of hats. So I had my family in town visiting, and we went to a yarn store together, and my sister was like, ooh, let me buy yarn, and then for Christmas you can make us something with the yarn, which I thought was so thoughtful of her, and it was really fun for me. So I made my sister a green giant toboggan out of a bulky weight yarn, and she picked out a little pom-pom to go on it. I made one of my nieces the Kite beach hat in a fingering weight hand-dyed yarn from Dawn to Dusk Fibers. It's in the colorway Perilous Quest, and I had enough left over to make myself something later, but it was really squishy. And I should mention all of these hat patterns were free, just because I feel like, I was like, I don't know enough about hat patterns to feel confident understanding when it's worth it to buy one. At this point in my knitting career, I had realized that some of the things that I had paid for patterns on, I was like, I probably could have found something about the same for free. See the Sophie Scarf / those fingerless mitts. So anyway, these were free patterns and they were all great. So it was a lace weight hat. She also wanted a pom-pom, so she got a pom-pom. My other niece got one in this squishy sport weight yarn from the Copper Corgi Fiber Studio. And it's basically a cabled pattern. It's not really lace, it is a cable, but because of the color variegation, I think it kind of almost reads like lace. I thought the way this one turned out was really cool. I really enjoyed working with that yarn as well. It was really squishy and lovely. So that was for her. And then my brother-in-law, I just made him a simple stockinette beanie in that same orange carmine from Pearl Soho that I'd used for my mom's gloves because it was a nice UT orange. Yeah, it was in his that I really started paying attention to some of the tensioning issues I had, which will continue for the rest of the year until I finally solve the mystery of what the problem was. So yeah, anyway, those were all the hats that I made. I also made my friend Bethany from Beautifully Booked Bethany. I made her a ear warmer, which was called the Epicea headband. I made that out of the Barocco alpaca that I had. This was my first time doing a headband. It's a very simple construction, and I think I messed up the stitch pattern, but it still ended up looking really nice, so I guess we'll just call that a win. Then I made a cabled collar for my mom. This is where you can really see some of the tensioning issues I had, but in person, it actually looks great. It's like a little dicky that I made for her for Antarctica. I used the Durarum Natura Gilead, which I really enjoyed working with in this beautiful color Darjeeling. And I had enough of it left over that I decided I'm just going to make myself something with that. So I ordered some more so that I can make myself a garment in it because I really enjoyed working with it. But this was my first time doing a different cable than a basic, you know, cable back, cable front. So that was a nice challenge. It was my first time doing a collar, and it was my first time doing a saddle shoulder construction. So I will say this pattern, I'll just say that for a paid pattern, there were a lot of problems with it. I'm not sure it was test knit, but I do really like the finished result. So I guess buyer beware there. And then what else did I make for gifts? Man, okay, we're really just in the gift central here. For my best friend, I made her a cowl. So this is my first cowl. I used Camellia Fiber Co. and Love Camellia, and this was another free pattern with this really delicate little lace detail on it, which I thought went with the sort of sweetness of that colorway very nicely. And then I also made her the Cloudburst fingerless gloves using the rest of the Sylvan fingering I had from this pair of socks. It's in the colorway Moss, a beautiful yarn, and I really liked how those turned out, and she tried them on when I gave them to her. They look really great on her. She loves green, and I thought that that was like a very girly but not like saccharine combo for her. So I really was happy with how those turned out. And then I guess the last finished gift that I'll mention is I did this really interesting hat for my mom. So I had leftover knitting for Olive worsted heavy or heavy merino, which is a worsted weight, and then I had a little bit of the alpaca green worsted left over. So I was like, okay, I want to make her a really tight fitting hat. So I made her this garter stitch cloche that's called the 10 stitch hat. And it's a very interesting construction where you only have 10 stitches on your needle at any time, and you're like joining in these ridge bumps. It does not look that great off. Like, I think it kind of looks a little lumpy and silly, but it looks great on. Like, I almost frogged the whole thing when I finished because I was like, I can't give this as a gift. Then I put it on my head and was like, oh, this actually looks so cute. She looks great in it. And it's a really nice, very tight fitting hat. And I wanted to give it to her for Antarctica because I knew she'd have a parka, but I wanted to give her like a layer that would fit underneath the parka pretty well. So this is like a surprising hit. It looks really cute on her. And yeah, it turned out really well in an interesting construction. Those I think are all the gift knits that are done. Okay, man, I feel like I've been talking to you guys so long. How do people do these? I'm trying not to talk about any one of these too much, but. Okay, next we have what I would call my second failure, and I think that this is actually in the wash right now because I use this now as a sleep tank. But this, oh, no. Actually, first I made a Tolsta Tee that was the opposite of a failure because I wore it constantly, and I'm gonna make another one next year. I would say this is probably my most successful summer garment. This is a Tolsta Tee. I made mine striped. I use the Sandusgarn Lena, which is a great summer fabric. And it has, it does have that like cool to the touch quality, which is really cool. And then I also use some hand-dyed linen yarn from Potomac Fiber Co. No, the yarn was Potomac. Terrapin Fiber Co. She does only plant-based yarn, so if you're somebody who can't or doesn't wear animal fiber, she has some beautiful yarns. And I found hers, I would say her hand-dyed was as easy to work with as the Lena from Sandusgarn. So if you're looking for hand-dyed that's still easy to work with and plant-based, I would really recommend it. This I got a ton of wear out of. You can wash this. I think that the green stripes are really fun. And the Tolsta Tee is everywhere for good reason because it's a very versatile raglan tee pattern that comes in a lot of sizes and you could just do a lot with it as a base. I will say that, again, I hadn't learned the lesson about sizing and which one to pick. If I were making this again, I would make it in a size or two smaller probably and keep the bust shaping. That's the other thing. This has bust shaping, which I thought really helped. Particularly me, again, as somebody whose largest measurement is their bust, the bust shaping really helped get a better fit. But I wore this a lot. I got compliments on it. It's really comfy to wear, and it is pretty great that it's machine washable. So I definitely am gonna make more Tolsta Tees because I think that this is a good summer top solution. The stripes I think were a good choice to keep me engaged and not getting bored. I really enjoyed this, and yeah. I would say if I had to pick one garment that was most successful for my summer projects, it would probably be this one. My least successful summer project is the one that's in the wash, and that was my Tolsta Tank. And this is just me being stubborn because I had been learning that I don't really like working at a fingering weight gauge for me for the size of garment that I need. And I also really don't like working bottom up in a fingering weight gauge. But I just had it in my mind. I'd already bought the yarn and I was gonna use it come hell or high water. It just wasn't, I just couldn't get myself to knit for as long as I needed to get a really wearable garment for out of the house. And then also my tension issues, which now I know were because I was twisting my pearls, but I had a really noticeable tension difference between in the round versus flat pieces. So for that reason, this garment I don't wear, except I do wear it as a sleep tank. So I'm still getting use out of it, but I would make it again in the DK version. Actually, I plan to make a new one in the DK version with 2 strands of knitting for olive cotton merino held double. The knitting for olive cotton merino feels great to knit with. It's like really, it feels, I heard someone say this and it's true. It feels almost like lotion. It's got this like really soft quality to it. But it's such a light fingering. It's like verging on lace, and trying to do a full garment in that was not the move. Like that was just me being stubborn, trying to stick with the original plan. That was clearly not a good idea. So I am gonna remake the Tolsta Tank. I think I'm gonna make the true pullover version, but I'm gonna make the DK and I'm gonna hold the knitting for olive merino, cotton merino, I have double to do it. So that was, I'd say, the other, I feel like I had 2 fails this year, and that was the second one. Then at this point, I had fully transitioned into fall and winter knitting. And my next one is the sweater I'm wearing, which is the Alder Sweater by Rebecca Clow. And this, I think, is the garment I'm most proud of. It was a lot of work, but I really took the time to block as I went, to really be thoughtful about the choices I was making, because I had used some birthday money I'd gotten to buy some very nice yarn. So this is in the Camellia Fiber Co. Yak, and then the Hedgehog Fibers, it's like their DK Merino in the colorway Birthday Cake. And it's a little pinker. I was hoping it would read a little more purple, but the skeins I got ended up reading a little pinker, which is fine. It is a beautiful sweater. It is all over mosaic. It's a very simple repeat that you can memorize, but it's a lot of work to do that 4-row repeat. In a mosaic color work, it just goes slower because of the way the mosaic works, but it is so beautiful. I'm really proud of this piece. It turned out exactly the way I was hoping it would. It satisfies, like I said, that principle that I think the Crayabea has in a lot of her knits, which is, it's not hard, but it's just not a stockinette, so it's like a little more thought. So for me, that's just the right amount of engagement when I'm knitting. So this took a long time, but it was really worth it because I loved the way that it came out. So this, I think of this as my birthday sweater, even though my birthday's in July, because like I said, it was a birthday gift, the yarn, and the colorway is birthday cake. So yeah. This one I would say is my best piece I made this year. And then I pivoted because I wanted to make sure I had time to knit myself the Halloween sweater of my dreams, which, Hastings just messed up earlier by forcing me to cut some of the yarn off the bottom of it, which we're gonna have to figure out how to fix. Sorry, camera overheated again. I think I was telling you about my Halloween sweater. So I definitely realized I wanted to prioritize making this because I saw a picture and fell in love. This is from the Petite Knitter, and I believe this is called the Nocturnal Jumper. This is my first time doing more than one color in color work, so more than one stranded color work. I'd say the Petite Knitter is another one where the pattern is extremely straightforward. It's mostly a chart, so I think this was a decent second outing with color work. I am so proud of the yoke, though I did realize afterwards that I was using my cables. I think I was sticking with shorter cables for too long, which means that my floats I think are a little tight and therefore I have a little bit of puckering, but that was, you live, you learn. This flew by. This did not take very long to do because the color work is so engaging and because it's at a higher weight. I will say the sad part of this sweater is that the sleeves and the main color are in Lion Brand Fisherman's Wool, which it turns out I can't deal with next to my skin. It's just a little too rough and scratchy, and it was giving me rashes on my hands once I got out of the color work part where I was using the North Bay Fiber Co. as my colors. The actual body was giving me rashes. So I had been considering trying to do some kind of sweater surgery where I give myself a different color for the body. So that's part of why I didn't freak out when I just had to cut it just now from Hastings getting his claw snagged in it, because I had been kind of thinking maybe I want to do some kind of sweater surgery to this as an experiment, especially since it is, I think of this as a seasonal sweater like my Christmas sweater, where I'm only really wearing it a few weeks a year. I feel like this might be a good candidate to try to do sweater surgery on because I made it super cropped in the arms and the body because I didn't want it to be next to my bare skin, so I have to wear something under this. So anyway, maybe this was destiny, him getting his claws in this one. If he had gotten his claws in this, woo, not even gonna go there. So yeah, I love how this turned out. It's so cute and exactly what I had envisioned, minus the wool that gives me rashes. So we'll see if we can fix that as an experiment in sweater surgery. Then the next thing I finished, it looks like, was a different sweater, or not a different sweater, a different scarf, which I did as a palette cleanse from all the sweaters I had going on. I just wanted something quick. And since I had gotten so much wear out of my Sophie Scarf, another pattern I had bought early on was scarf number 3 from My Favorite Things Knitwear. This is really cute. It's a really a nice, just little, same kind of principle of I just wear it sort of to give myself a little extra warmth. I wore it quite a bit this fall once I finished it. This is my first time doing, I had at least one new stitch in this one, the distaff stitch on the edge. But this is, it's a clever little construction she's got going here. So this is one I'm actually not mad I paid for, in the sense of like, there's more to it than meets the eye. But yeah, this was a nice little palette cleanse, and it was using that yarn I used for one of my niece's hats. So I technically matched them, which is cute. And yeah, this was a nice little palette cleanse for me. Then another sweater I'm extremely proud of. It does have one glaring technical issue that you, I presume as a knitter who's watching this, will notice. But I've worn this a lot since I finished it. I get so many compliments on this, and it is a beautiful sweater despite the glaring technical error. This is the Snow Crocus from Midori Hirose. It is my first cabled sweater, my first saddle shoulder sweater, and it is using the Knitting for Olive cotton, not cotton, Knitting for Olive heavy merino in the color Mushroom Rose. My inspo for the color was some stitch stoppers I have. I thought this was such a cute color and sweater, and I wanted a version of it. It's basically a Cargill sweater, but this is the Snow Crocus version. This is so beautiful. It does have a major, what I thought was a tensioning issue, and I can now tell you is that I was twisting my pearls. So the parts of this where I worked flat versus in the round, it is very obvious where that changes, but that's okay, because really only knitters notice. Most people don't. And when I'm wearing it, it's less obvious than when it's just laying flat. I love this sweater. It's so comfy. I really like this yarn because it's a worsted weight, but it feels almost like it's woolen spun. So it has that kind of airiness to it. And I just love this cabled pattern. This pattern was difficult to follow in true Midori Hirose fashion, but it is a beautiful pattern, so I think the extra work to get what she's trying to say is worth it. You can also notice I've learned to start putting some contrasting yarn in the back so I can always be sure I'm putting it on the correct way. But yeah, this is my first time doing double moss stitch, my first time doing a full cable. It's got this like tulipy kind of flower cable that's so pretty. I love this sweater. It's one of my favorites I made, for sure. Then I would say the runner-up in terms of like technically my best garment is this Over It Slipover by Lily Kate Makes, I think. I use this Megs & Co. hand-dyed heavy worsted merino, and I had never had a pullover slash vest like this before, but this is so practical in the climate I'm in, because often it's not really cold enough to warrant a full sweater or jumper, but a pullover is perfect. I will say that I think the superwash of this made it grow. I was intending for this to have 0 ease, and instead it has, I think, about probably 4 inches of positive ease, which I didn't intend. But aside from some tensioning issues, which you guys are going to struggle to see because of my twisted pearls, I think technically this is pretty great. It's got this double knit or double moss stitch pattern that joins on the sides, has a little bit of a split hem. This is super cute, very versatile, and very practical, and definitely inspo for next year. I think I'm going to prioritize making some more pullovers because I found this to be very, very functional in the fall. Okay, we're rounding the bend. We've got 2 more finished objects, or finished objects left. So one is I did given how much I was knitting Rebecca clothes garments, I was like, well, maybe I should just do a test knit for her. So I did. This is the Staffin Sweater. This will come out in January, and this is such an easy, quick knit, but it's so satisfying. It's her take on a Gansey type sweater, but it's so much more size inclusive. I think I made this in the 3rd or 4th biggest size. I probably could have gone down a size or 2, and considering that there's even more sweaters or more sizes beyond this, very inclusive as a Gansey pattern. It's hard to tell. On camera, this comes off as purely red, but in person, this is like a beautiful orangey red. There's like some gold flecks in this. It's a Harrisville design wool. I will say getting gauge on this is pretty tough. A lot of people had a problem because Rebecca's a very loose knitter. So I could get the stitch gauge, but not the row gauge. The row gauge, I had to pick which one, and I figured stitch was more important. So yeah, this is just a beautiful sweater. This was my Thanksgiving sweater. I was like, I really want to have this to wear for Thanksgiving, and I did. It also, because of its color, has kind of been my backup Christmas sweater, but it's really cozy. I will say this is the Harrisville yarn I was allergic to while I was knitting. I didn't realize it at the time, but once I was done, my stuffy nose cleared up. Once I blocked this and got some of the like animal whatever out, this has been not making me congested as much. So that was the only takeaway I had, but look how beautiful. I love this sweater. And it's really oversized and cozy, but in a way that doesn't look, I just realized a lot of the oversized stuff on me looks like it's not intentional. And as a fat person, I don't know. I feel like sometimes oversized things looks like I'm trying to hide that I'm fat, and I'm like, I'm not ashamed or surprised that I'm fat. I don't have a problem with people knowing that. And this looks oversized in a way that doesn't look like I'm trying to hide that I'm fat, which is the look that I'm going for. So there's something about this construction that pulls that off. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. And like I said, a very potato chippy kind of knit, because it goes by pretty quick. So then the last thing that I finished, and when I tell you I was busting my butt trying to get this done for Christmas to wear, because we did Christmas super early in our family this year because my mom is going to Antarctica for Christmas. So I was like, oh, I want to have this to wear during the trip. I don't know why that was so in my mind, because there was no reason to do this. And then I finished it, but didn't take into account the time it would need to block. So I didn't even wear it over Christmas at home, but I have worn it quite a bit since then. And that is my Cargill sweater, once again, by Rebecca Clow of the Crayabea. This is a beautiful sweater. It's a dip stitch pattern. So this is my first time doing all over dip stitch, which is a very easy stitch. It's not hard to do, but it just does. It's kind of like it's very similar actually to mosaic color work, in that it just takes more rows to get the same amount of length you would for stockinette. And so it just takes a long time. I will admit that I was getting tired. So I was like, I think I can block an extra couple inches in this and just be done, because it was starting to wear on me. But I love this color. I think this is called Hydro Blue from Pearl Soho. This is their knitting yarn, which I would definitely knit again as a good, just like, I think I've learned, I could probably do a video on this if people end up liking knitting content on this channel, but I've learned a lot about which yarns I want to go with different projects. This to me, I would definitely use again for a project like this, where the star of the show is the stitch versus the yarn. It's a really good, just like workhorse knitting yarn. It's called knitting yarn, and that's what it is. And they have a good amount of colors. So I would definitely use this again. And I just think that this pattern is very impactful, and you won't be able to probably tell from here, but in the ribbing was where I got served a TikTok that pointed out that tension issues sometimes are because you're twisting your pearls. And I didn't understand how I possibly could be twisting my pearls, and then realized I'm twisting by going the wrong way with my wrap as an English knitter. So I fixed it in the last sweater of the year. But as you saw, I had plenty of great projects that were very wearable and lovely. So even if, just encouragement to new knitters, even if you're making mistakes, Most non-knitters won't notice, and even you may not notice as a beginner. And you can still have beautiful garments that you made yourself and fit you the way you want them to fit. Even if you're having like fundamental technical issues because you didn't correctly remember what your great aunt taught you 30 years ago, you know? So, word to the wise there. In terms of what I'm taking into the new year, I may finish a couple of these before the end of the year, but there's no rush. So I have a book club cardigan from Sorry Nordland that I'm about halfway through on, that I'm very much enjoying. This is my first full cardigan that's not cropped. This is my first cabled cardigan. This is this my first drop shoulder? I think one other thing had a drop shoulder, but one of the first drop shoulders. And I think this will be my first time doing a double knit button band. So wish me luck there. I think I'm about halfway done. I just joined under the arms and I have all my pearls going correctly this time, so that helps. But this is gonna be beautiful. This is in the Evergreen Studio colorway Trolls. I was going for sort of a tie-dyed look, which I thought would be a fun twist on a classic cream cabled cardigan. Lots of C's there. A little alliteration for you. Yeah, this is beautiful. I'm really enjoying it. And I think I'm less impatient to get done on projects where the construction is a little more vague to me, because I'm not totally sure what's gonna happen next. So I think it makes me a little more patient with the process. But yeah, this is gonna be a beaut, and I'm gonna get a lot of wear out of this. One of the things I've realized is that in a warmer climate, the knitted things I get the most wear out of are cardigans, so I'm really gonna try to make more of those in the new year. But yeah, I'm excited for this. This is my first Sorry Nordland pattern, and it's going well so far. I got this yarn almost for free too, because I had ordered something off Etsy, and when it arrived, it was from Amazon, and so before I could even dispute, they just gave me, they said, keep it, and here's credit back for something else on Etsy. So I used it to buy a full cabled cardigans quantity of this hand-dyed yarn, which is beautiful. So I have that going. I'm taking that into the new year probably. I got a ball of this cashmere from Magpie Fibers in the colorway Queen Beaver, and I'm using that to make my first shawl. It's a pattern called Fluff, and this is what I'm just picking up when I have spare moments, but that will be fluffy and lovely. Whenever, and the many occasions I have to wear an evening wrap, it will be an evening wrap for me. So I'm taking that. Oh God, what else? I'm taking, I've started the beehive quilt from someone for my scraps. That's going to be a very long-term whip. So I'm using that for my hand-dyed fingering scraps. I was inspired by Retro Claude on that one. Thought, oh, that's such a smart way to use your fingering scraps that are of nice quality that you don't just want to, you know, ditch. And I'm using all my little like cut spares to do the stuffing instead of buying, so that's good too. And then the other thing I'm going to work on in the spring is the Traveler by Andrea Mowry. This is in Malabrigo Arroyo, and this I realized I wasn't going to be able to finish in time for fall, so I was like, well, really when I would wear this is in the spring, so I will pick this up soon so that I can have it for the spring. But I just fell in love with this colorway called, I think, Rooted Vegetables. So yeah, that one is hibernating but will come out soon. Oh, and then my last gift, which I have until the weekend after Christmas to finish, is the Musselburgh hat by Isolde Teague, which I'm also making out of Malabrigo Arroyo in the colorway Glitter. This, I will say, now that I've actually made up the fabric, I don't want it to have, like, if you fold this 4 times over your forehead, that's going to be so hot. So I actually think I'm going to end up stopping halfway and doing a ribbed ending to it, because I think that'll be more wearable. I had heard people mention that about the Musselburgh before, that you have to be okay with there being 4, but I guess until I actually saw the density of the fabric, it just didn't register fully to me. So yeah, this is gonna be, I think I'm gonna use the top half of the Musselburgh and then just do like a nice long rib section. This is for my friend Jolene. When this goes up, she and I will be on a little staycation together for Christmas. But I actually loved the cast on and the way that you didn't have to figure out gauge until you actually were going. So this is my first time doing a bottom down on a beanie, and this is with the Emily Ochre cast on. So this is my first time doing that. So I'm still learning, still doing things for the first time, which is part of the fun for me. So, oh my gosh, I've been talking so much. I feel like I didn't even really cover a lot about any of these projects, and yet I've been talking forever. So I'm just gonna start to wind things down here. Also, my camera has overheated like 5 times. So it's sick of me talking, and you guys probably are too. I just wanted to pay it forward because, yeah, I found these Everything I Knit in a Year videos really inspiring last year, especially the ones from people who had just started knitting. So I wanted to pay it forward and say, hey, if you are not a knitter or you've just dabbled and you want to get more into it, you can learn a lot from books and YouTube and TikTok and all these things from your local yarn store, other knitters. You can get a lot done. I'm still, as we discussed, not technically perfect for most of the year, and still not, but yeah, I've learned a lot, and even things that were not technically perfect are still completely lovely wearable garments. And this has also helped me, you know, not buy clothes as much. I put most of my clothing budget into doing this year, so that was also nice. Yeah. All around, recommend. If you are high anxiety and need something to keep your hands busy and, you know, like getting in there and learning something new, and plus size particularly, if you're trying to make things that fit you the way that you want to be fitted, this is a great option. Take it up. Also sewing is also great for that. So anyway, I'll wrap this up. I am going to do at least one other knitting video to kick this year off, but this is still a book channel. Camera says it's gonna overheat again, so I feel like we really just need to land the plane. Let me know what you thought about anything I talked about, I guess. Usually I'm asking you what you thought about the books I talked about. Let me know what you thought about any of these sweaters. Let me know if you have any tips or tricks based on the frustrations or challenges I've encountered. Always appreciate the wisdom of more experienced knitters. And yeah, like if you liked it, hit the bell if you wanna know when I post, and subscribe if you want to hear some stuff about books, because that is mostly what I talk about. But yeah, I hope you are well. I hope you have a wonderful start to the new year, and I will just talk to you soon.